Hey team, welcome back. Let's look at what we're going to do here. Convert JSON to C#, C# back to JSON. So before we begin, the first thing we need to do is right click, say manage NuGets, and then we're going to come over here and click on newtonsoft, and then we're going to say, mine says uninstall because I just installed it, but you're going to hit install. And once that's installed, you need to make sure that you use these using statements for newtonsoft and system.io because we're going to be opening and closing files. And there you have it. So this right here sets up our environment, and let's look at our first program. So we're writing a console application, and what I have is two methods. One to convert JSON to C#, and then the next one is C# to JSON. So let's kind of like dive in on this convert JSON to C#. Notice that I create a file, and the name of that file is called customers with employees. Let's take a look at that file. And notice the name of this customers with employee.json, it's got a customer ID, a name, and then notice that it has an array of employees. My goal is to deserialize this and put this into a C# object. So we need to write a C# object that can manage this structure right here. So how do we do that? Well, what I've done is I've come down to this customer and I created the customer class. And notice that when I get to the employees, I make a list of type employee. Remember, this employee had first name, last name, and phone, first name, last name, and phone, and I'm calling that employee. I'm making a list of them. So we can have 1, 2, or 0, it doesn't matter. This structure will support that. So let's step into our program. I'm going to hit the F10 button, and then the F10, we can step in there. F11 goes into the method, and I get my file name, and I say, hey, does that file exist? It sure does. And then what I'm doing here is I'm going to read that file and I'm going to put it in this just text. And let's see what happens when I do that. So I do that, and notice that just text is just text. Now there's formatting to this file in that text file, but to my C program here it says text. And then I'm going to use this just text as the input to this deserialize object. And it's going to take this text and it's going to make it look like this class object. And then I'm going to assign it to a new instance of customer C. It's just one line of code, F10. And notice that class has now been built. I've got my customer name, and look at this, I have 2 employees. My first employee is AA, my second one was BB, right? Pretty easy. And then I return that. And that's pretty much going from a JSON object that's been on your disk, and I loaded it up into a C# object. The next one is I'm going to go from a C# object to a JSON object. And how do I do that? Well, F11, step into it. And notice here that I'm going to go create me a customer object. And I have it down there in a method called create customer v1. Now this right here is kind of like the long way of doing it, but I just want to show you, just in case this is the first time you've seen this, is I have that data structure, but employees is a list. So what I did is I said c.employees equals this new list. And then I created a new object called employee of E1, and I put the first one in there. And then I said c.employees add. See that name? And I put that first one in there. And then I'm just going to reuse that variable E1, and I'm going to make some new memory. I'm going to populate it with the elements, and then I'm going to add it back to that class. Now there's another way to do that that's a little bit more streamlined, if you will. And you can see here that I have my customer 10 and company 1. But then I created a new list, and I used the open and close curlies, and then I just knew it each time. I don't go create another variable called E1. Notice here I just make the memory and I put that data in there. I prefer doing it this way, but either way works. In fact, you may find other ways. As long as you get your data in there, that's all that really matters. So F10, I create my object. My object has got that customer and 2 employees. And then I'm going to say, hey, I want that output to come to this file. Well, let's call this file right here called new customer. And I'm going to hit F10. Let's make sure that is new customer. And it's like, hey, does that file exist? Nope. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that file and I'm going to write that formatted file in there. Because remember, I took that customer, that C# object, and then I serialized that object. So this right here is a C# object. And then what I did is I serialized that object. And I'm going to build this pattern. So F10, I wrote it out. And now when I write it out, look at this new customer.json. I'm going to open that up with Visual Code. And notice when I say format document, there it is. So that looks like my original one. I mean, they're identical. And I'm done. And there you have it, team. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And if you found this video informative and it warrants a thumbs up, please click that. And lastly, I'd like for you to support my channel. Please consider subscribing. Thank you, team.